How do you do this? This to me would be like trying to create a screenplay from Catcher in the Rye, because you want to talk about people with expectations. How do you dive into it? And you did it perfectly, I should say, man. Each book is well represented, and each book kind of like stops the halfway. There's 4 books in the Dark Knight Returns miniseries, and each time you get to the midway point of both flicks, you're at the midway point of both. It's fascinating. I'm for flaws. I'm not pricked, but there is none. It's airtight. So
well, you also probably noticed that even though if you look at the big arc of the thing, it's very, very true. It's actually all shuffled around. Like the scenes aren't in the same order. First of all, the rule 1 is, honor the intent. But I was given free rein. I was told, yes, everybody's gonna be watching and be slavishly devoted to this thing, but change whatever you have to change. And so, like Jay is saying, it's more about like the impressions or the ideas and the themes behind it, and find a way to translate that to the screen and do it a new way. And a lot of the changes were really structure, were order. Taking the stuff that was, mixed throughout all 4 books. And the stories were much more intercut through the 4 books, and saying, okay, well, to make this a solid movie and that a solid movie and tell this story here and that story there, this has got to move around, this has got to move around. Find an arc for the first part that is one movie arc, find an arc for the second part that's one movie arc, but then it all feels like a unit. So a lot of it was just moving things around and honestly not worrying about this being the Torah that you can't change.
Right.
And saying, look, my job is to get into Frank's head. I'm going to get into Frank's head, but I'm also not going to worry about this line of dialogue or that word.
So when you're adding, it's one thing to be like, well, we can lose this, we don't need this, or if you're shifting things around. But when you hit the block of like, okay, I'm thinking about adding a line, that's like somebody going, this Genesis makes no sense, So I would imagine you approach it with sort of a seriousness, but maybe not. Maybe you're just like, I can't think like that. How do you...
I couldn't think like that, you're right. I mean, in truth, you kind of, well, first of all, you've read the book, I'm sure, about 1,000 times more than I did, but that still leaves me about 100 times.
Right.
So I've read it plenty, and
And somehow I don't feel like a winner after those.
And certainly a whole bunch of times working on this. But then when it comes to writing the script, and once I figured it out, and like, okay, here's the structure, and here's how I'm going to do it, and here's the outline that I'm going to work off of, then I just put the book down and write the scenes the way they like. If you try and write something. Like, here's the words the person used before, whoever it is, whether it's Frank or any other person you're adapting. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to like, okay, I got to get those words in, you're not going to write real people up there. You've got to like, at least for the first draft, free yourself to, and why am I telling you this? Free yourself to like.
I don't know if you've seen my paper. I'm writing things down in my head. I was like, this could help.
At least for the first draft, you have to completely clean the slate and say, okay, these are real human beings who are just talking right now, and whatever comes out, comes out. And thanks a lot for the comments on that last line. And that's just something that came out, and it felt about right.
It did. It felt right. And like, you must be sitting there writing, going, I can't believe he didn't give Commissioner Gordon a final word. And then you were like, you know what? I'll give it.
It's funny. There's a lot of like, Batman and Commissioner Gordon never intersect in the second movie. They are not in one frame together.
I know, yeah.
And that was really weird. And I struggled with that and thought, okay, well, maybe I'll make up some scenes for that. And then instead there are ways to sort of thematically connect them and have like, really Commissioner Gordon is carrying the mantle of Batman through the riots. And he's carrying this, as he puts it, the spirit of, what we need in this city. And so they don't have to intersect. I think it is a line straight in books that he says to Yindel, I know everything I need to know.
It is. It's nice, and it lets him off the hook too. And especially he's like, I'm not going to be with Batman in this movie. It was last movie, man. and he's great. He's not here, but it's David Selby. Is wonderful. Does a wonderful job. But let's jump over to acting real quick. So I want to bring it to them after we get to everybody here. You have been doing this every time I sit down and watch something by myself, as far back as working at Quick Stop, and I'm not saying you're old, you're not. You're right. As far back as working at Quick Stop, the next stage of my life when I started rewatching the cartoons I used to watch with my kid, as they sat there and like, these are Tiny Toons, and showed her that, watched all the Batmans. I've been seeing your name forever and ever, man. You're an ace, and I got to see you firsthand. I've spoken with people. There's nobody has an unkind word for you. Everyone talks about you. as if you are a genius, and we're going to test it right here. No. Now, but for some cats that don't know, like most people go, oh, she's the casting, but your voice direction. Explain that for these cats that are unaware.
I think a lot of you know this actually, but we record the voices first and then animate to that. And so, almost like the old radio shows, we sit in front of microphones with music stands and scripts, and I basically describe the action that the actor needs to know. And you know, if it's properly cast, the truth is you just slate and get the heck out of their way. And then say, well, you have to do that scene just a little bit more energized because you're literally running across a roof while you're doing that. But truly, if you have the right cast, people that are really good actors, that's key. And then you just move them through the scenes. So the voice direction is pretty much like second only to writing as far as the process. Maybe you've started storyboards, maybe not even started storyboards before we record. It depends on how production's going. But so voice direction is really just, you're responsible for what the picture looks like, I'm responsible for what it sounds like.
Now, for all this time you've been doing it, have you become a fan of DCU? Were you a fan of the characters?
I wasn't.
Or did you have to learn?
I learned so much, truly, from Bruce Timm is where almost all my education came from. We worked together on Animaniacs, I'm guessing.
No, I never worked on Animaniacs. It was Tiny Toons, yeah.
Tiny Toons,
Yeah.
so. So that was what, 1990 or so we started casting?
Before Ariel was born.
But I dove into that world because I knew nothing about it. I was doing much sillier sorts of cartoons, and then I learned about this world, and then there was a period of time when we were doing a bunch of them. We did the first Batman animated series, then Superman, then Justice League, and it just became, that was a ton of my work, and I actually started to miss some of the sillier stuff, and then got back into doing SpongeBob and a couple other things that sort of brought the silly back into my life, because only this world is intense. It's really intense, and so I kind of needed that sort of break in it. But I love this world. This particular piece I knew nothing about until I got the job to direct it. So I had to, and thank God I didn't know, because I think I would have been overwhelmed with the responsibility. And so then after we got way into it, people were like, you know how important a piece this is. I'm like, really? I just try to do a good job, that's all I can do.
Right. Yeah, it's not, some cats it's like, wow, it's just old Batman. I was like, this isn't old Batman, it's so much more than that. How do you arrive at the cast? You've done this a bunch of times, you've done it for many permutations and incarnations of the Dark Knight. How do you arrive at the cast this time? We'll start with Ariel.
How did I find her?
Yeah.
I watched TV. The thing was, we knew we didn't want to go with an adult female doing a kid voice. We made that conscious decision that we wanted to get a youth to do this. And you can tell pretty much, Bruce and I joke about this all the time, you can tell what we're watching on TV by who we're casting. Yeah. Because, Modern Family is a tremendous show, and Ariel's a tremendous actress, and we went, okay, well, let's go Ariel Winter. And we offered her, and she said yes. So that was an easy one. Peter Weller, we had actually had on our wish list for a long time, and I think we'd approached him a few times, and he just wasn't available in our production schedule. And we have a really finite window of when we can record. Pretty much about a month is when, from the get-go, go ahead and spend money and start casting, to it must be recorded. And so a month is not a long time to put an actor like Peter on hold and get some time locked in. We were lucky enough to get Ariel that way. So we had Peter on the list for a long time, and we were lucky enough to get him. There were, I have a cheat sheet because there were so many actors in this.
Huge,
there are
yeah.
33 actors in this piece.
Most of them doing multiple voices.
Many of them.
You two did voices as well this time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Andrea's in the opening.
Yes, I'm in the opening, and I also have that wonderful, I mean, the first part, where my entire role was, no!
That's right.
That's it, I'm mommy, that's right.
That's right, you were mommy.
And on this one, I think I say, it's when Commissioner Gordon is trying to get everybody to do the bucket lady.
Let go of me.
Yeah, let go, yeah. Are you crazy? Let go of me! I know his role. But, David Selby, we were so lucky to get. He had just done Social Network, so he was on our mind. Conan O'Brien was doing another project at Warner Brothers, so we knew we had access to him. So, you wanna? He said, yeah, he came in, he did the job in 15 minutes. And can I just take 1 second to say, you know that intense laugh he has to do as just before he dies? He laughs, a huge laugh, 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 laugh. Stop, because you're dead. He did it in one take. And laughing on cue, as any actor in here can tell you, is
Really
the
hard.
hardest thing to do. And he did it in one take. He was stunning.
Brilliant.
He really was. Michael McKean. Oh my Lord, who doesn't love Michael McKean? Mark Valley was just, we were just lucky enough to get him.
Who is that cat?
Who is
He
Mark
was the
Valley?
human target.
Really?
Yeah,
On
a
the TV show?
couple years ago, yeah.
He was wonderful.
Wasn't he great?
He was
Really
really
good.
good. Like, that's the way you imagine Superman to sound. You read it kindly, like a Boy Scout, and when he gets mad, when he's like,
tough.
Bruce, this is idiotic,
Right.
he doesn't even sound that mad.
I thought it was terrific. And just to really quickly, I know Yuri Lowenthal is here in the audience somewhere.
Yeah.
Yuri.
Yuri.
Yuri. I don't know who else is in the audience, but if I may just really quickly, because these are stunning people, Gary Anthony Williams is the black newscaster in this part. He also was the mutant leader in the first part, which is just crazy opposite ends of the spectrum
Yeah.
voice-wise. Maria Canals, Gwendolyn Yo, Paget Brewster's in there. Jim Meskimen is President Reagan as
Dead on, huh?
Remarkable, wonderful impressionist, and there's a bunch of other characters in there. Yuri, Maurice, I brought a bunch of my friends in that I wanted to play with, I hadn't played with in a while. Pinky and the Brain are in this. James Patrick Stewart, Gray Delisle, Danny Jacobs, Carlos Alzraki, these are all top voiceover actors. Townsend
Tress McNeil,
Coleman,
too, right?
Tress McNeil.
Kyle.
And let me just take 1 second about Tress McNeil. In the scene where Tress McNeil is the woman with the Bruno with the Nazi nipples, and also she's the voice of Batman disguised as the old woman. So she's talking against herself, which is so awesome about these voiceover actors who can do multiple voices. She was just stunning.